r/AskReddit. Teachers who regularly get invited to high school reunions. What are the most amazing transformations, common patterns, epic stories, saddest declines etc. you've seen through the years? My husband graduated from a fancy prep school. Literally over 90% of his class are lawyers and doctors now. To his parents' disdain, my husband became a professional poker player. Whenever he goes to reunions there's a circle of these super successful doctors and lawyers around him because they'd rather listen to his stories. Edit. This blew up overnight. To answer some of the questions. How can you be a professional at something that's based on luck and chance? There's a lot more than meets the eye. Hunches and gut feelings are a very small part of poker. It's a very mathematical, probabilities-driven game. If you're curious, consider looking up game theory branch of mathematics, and specifically as it pertains to poker. If you are very curious and technically minded, pick up a copy of Mathematics of Poker by Bill Chen and Jared Ankerman. How much does he make? A whole lot more than me, and I have a decent job, not a doctor or a lawyer though. It's a mixed bag of feelings. To come home from a frustrating day to see that he's won my monthly salary. What's the biggest he's won/lost at once? He's won a tournament for just under $1 million, and I believe he had about 25-30% of himself at the time. He's had a few more low mid 6-figure scores with various amounts of himself. When I talk about having percent of himself, as someone brushed upon it, a lot of the players swap or sell their action. The way it works is that you cover a part of someone's tournament buy-in with a little markup for the work they are putting in plus their edge, and in return, if they win some money, they then pay you back that percentage of their prize. This allows people to play bigger tournaments than they would if they had to pay it all themselves. As far as how much he's lost at once, there isn't a lot of losing an obscene amount at once in tournament poker. I think at some point he's entered a $10,000 tourney without selling any action. It's more about how many tournaments in a row you play without winning or cashing any. He's been fortunate not to have any super crazy downswings, knocks on wood. It's not a real/useful job. I don't entirely disagree, and neither does my husband. It's a common struggle among the players. Some try to add value to the world by accumulating as much as they can through poker and then donating a lot to charity. Others consider it a step in their life that then opens up opportunity to focus on other, non-zero-sum ventures. But two more points to consider. 1. How many regular jobs are actually making the world a better place, and how many are neutral to harmful? Even lawyers can range from doing a ton of good in the world to bringing a lot of harm. 2. If you could sit in the comfort of your own home, no boss, no schedule, play a game you love, and rake in enough to make a living and then some, would you say no to that? Because it's not a real value making job? I'd like to say that I would, but I'm not sure. I sympathize with his parents. I love his parents. They are amazing people. I should mention that in the 12 years that husband's been doing this, they've mostly come around and are proud of him. I've personally taken of time to make sure his mom knows enough about poker to understand that part of his life. Every few months, his dad still reminds him that he can take his LSATs anytime though. One kid grew up to be that guy, treading the line between jolly neckbeard and somewhat scary incel. I saw him after a full 12 years had passed. The worst part is, he was one of the most popular and socially adjusted kids in school. Always invited to parties, girls always trying to spend time with him. He'd always get away with absurd things in school because even the teachers liked him. He was just really funny and naturally charismatic, not to mention fit and handsome. However, he was strictly religious, so he never had sex with any girls. A few years after graduation, he became an atheist, or just a Gnostic, but by this time he had a dead-end job at a supermarket, had gained weight, and was obsessed with Dragon Ball Z because he related to unleashing his true power. So he spent like 5 years desperately messaging girls from HS, trying to say hey I can have sex now, but he was just not that attractive anymore and his social skills had deteriorated tremendously. He was rejected by every single girl that was pining over him just a few years ago. In high school, he ended up publicly coming out as a proud incel 2 years before the reunion, in a post where he declared war on women and socially adjusted men. He often posted about being a virgin and how Christianity basically made him an incel because he missed out every chance for sex he ever had. So at the reunion, he came wearing a white t-shirt with the words "fuck you." He'd walk up to now married women that he had previously solicited and just smirked silently, waiting for them to read the shirt. He was thrown out by the venue after about 40 minutes since so many people complained of his creepy behavior. Edit. Thanks for gold, kind human D. I feel so honored. I'm reading so many of you find inspiration in my post, and I'm so glad for that. Neurodivergency affects everyone differently. You just have to find what works for you. Wherever you are, keep pushing. I'd probably fall into this category. I entered high school with a positive outlook and love for the school my mom and grandma went to, but that quickly turned to a crapshoot. They dropped all the classes I wanted to take. Shop, auto, etc. Had 40 plus kids per class that were unmanageable, and we were entering the entitled kid era of everyone gets away with everything. At the same time I was diagnosed with ADHD, moderate to severe depression and anxiety. After freshman year I failed every class but journalism my sophomore year. Somehow my journalism teacher thought I should be recognized for my writing potential, and this had to be backed with support by at least 2 other faculty. But other than that I was failing everything. In the middle of my junior year I was passing Japanese class with 100% and that's it. I went to the advisors to ask about modifications for attention deficit, and they told me they would put me in special edition. I told them hell no, because the content was too easy. Anyone familiar with ADHD knows that uninteresting content makes it harder to focus, which is why I was doing very well in the classes I enjoyed and failing the rest. So mid-junior year my depression got the best of me, and I skipped school to sleep all day. I dropped out and went to an ALC where it only got worse. 1/4 way through what would have been my senior year I caught a huge bout of depression and quit altogether, as I was only awake then for 4 hours each day. After a few months I began an adult learning program for my GED, and other than math, which I had repeatedly failed, and so never made it past geometry in high school, I scored in the top 10%. In other words, I basically fell off the face of the earth and just skated by with the minimum. Lost my social life in the process. Now, almost 10 years later I'll be graduating in May with an AAS and technical certificate in CNC machining. I stand at the top of my program, serve as the student representative on my program's advisory committee, have an honors GPA with an invitation to Phi Theta Kappa and run the school's machine tool club. I also currently have 100% in my applications of quantitative reasoning, math, class, and I have guest taught some of the program's CAD/CAM class. I'll be only the second person in my paternal family to hold an associate's degree, and I'm the first and only female machinist at my company. So my high school reunion is actually coming up in a few months. 10 years, and while I now live about 600 miles away and have no interest in going back home to check up on the hometown homies, I still have a few friends around there. I also got invited to the event on Facebook, so it's also very interesting to see what's going on. Highlights of those attending: our class president is the only one who didn't develop a serious drug problem and or rack up a triple-digit body count among the women who are involved. Of the men, well, there has been trying to relive the glory days. As for where they are in life, think like the inspiring stories of millennial homie winners who actually had their parents buy the house in their kid's name. They also tend to go on rants about hard work and dedication. The irony is always rich with them. Highlights of those not going: we have jobs, we actually take care of our kids, and as a bonus a few of our formerly nerdy classmates got in shape, but kept their proclivity for CS. I don't believe our valedictorian is attending, because he's off doing groundbreaking stuff with his biotech degree from MIT. A few of those not attending are practicing MDs, to our surgeons. As for me, I'm still a little salty all this time later that everybody saw fit to prescribe Jesus for schizophrenia, the Bible Belt, and discouraged me from seeking formal treatment until I had a complete breakdown in college. Then again, in the face of all the adversity I have faced, there's more. I have written books, made some great friends, worked some very fulfilling jobs, gone back to college, gotten married and got 2 stepdaughters out of the deal, who consider me more of a dad than their own biological fathers ever were. Maybe not a shining example of success, but I think I'm doing pretty damn good considering the handicap. I had enough of high school when I was there. I'm perfectly content to be passively petty and internally laugh at those who failed despite all the advantages given to them. Not a teacher. I'd probably fall into this category. In high school I was thriving by the time I left. Known to be very morally responsible. Had a bunch of potential. My friends adored my presence since I was so friendly and kind. Welp, I'm total drug addict now 3 years later because eventually people fall apart. All that hard work really meant nothing. Sigh. Edit. Apologies for not actively replying. I just got home from work. I did not expect this much support, and honestly it really means a lot to me. Thank you. And a little backstory, I'm only 3 years into drug addiction, but I've been given stimulants for ADHD pretty much all my life, since I was 5. I'm 21, and diagnosed with severe ADHD and high functioning ASD. I only started getting high after high school when my ex at the time started emotionally manipulating me non-stop, so by the time I left her, I had extreme PTSD due to being abused by her. I fell into a deep depression and cut contact off with everyone because I wouldn't let anyone get close to me again. I then stumbled into hydrocodone from wisdom teeth surgery and learned that I'm always in pain. It only escalated from there. I realized there was a bunch of lying horseshit and pretty much dived into poly drug use and heavy binging. Learned that I could get high from stimulants too. Just had to dose stupid high amounts that would be way too much for others, since I had 15 years of stimulants under my belt. I've only recently taken hold of my addictions and have been actively working towards being able to control myself. I'm no longer a slave to these substances, but still have cravings out the wazoo. I have a daughter on the way though, and she definitely was a big push for me to get a hold of myself. It's been difficult, but I'm making progress and cutting back significantly. Thank you guys for the support. I don't feel like things are quite as hopeless as they seem. I'm actually just went to my high school reunion recently, like a year or 2 ago. I remember in a math class I took in my sophomore year I was talking about wanting kids at a fairly young age, like 24 to 25. Being that I'm Indian who grew up in America, I figured arrange marriage or love marriage and kids soon after, cause I figured I'd find the love of my life in college lol, or get arranged at a certain age. Anyways, I'm now in my late 20s and I don't want any part of marriage yet. I'd like kids someday, just not now. And some people from high school have full-fledged family. A few people married high school sweetheart and now have a family. It is some kind of experience to see a guy who I was friendly with start dating a girl, be in a relationship with her for so long, propose to her, get married to her, and now raising a child with her. Sure, it was mostly via Facebook, cause as far as friends from high school I still hang out with, I only hang out with one guy from time to time who was actually from a different graduation class. There are a few others I hang with every once in a while. I don't really hang out with high school buddies much, and I stayed near that school for close 8 years after I graduated from there. A lot of my close friends, like my future best man and groomsman, I only met after I finished college. I tried to fit in with the cool kids in school, and to be honest I was trying to be something I'm not, and I missed out on potential lifelong friends. To be honest, when I hear about guys who 3 friends since childhood, I'd always envy, cause I never had friends that I could always go to, but now I found that group. It may have been in my mid-20s, but these guys will be my groomsmen when my wedding comes someday. My best man is also a guy I met after finished college and hung out with a ton, with many story-filled occasion. I just happened to meet him and be great friend with him before these other guys. Not a teacher, but 26 years old. My school was incredibly cliquey, and I never had a great time there. I got bullied quite a lot for being a snotty little stoner punk / metalhead and not getting into hip hop at the same time as everyone else. I don't really keep in contact with too many of the people from my school, though thankfully the people I did get along with are doing well for themselves. But every Christmas the city I'm from always empties out, and a lot of my ex-classmates come back. Since leaving school I stopped smoking weed and found a serious focus and discipline in becoming a professional circus performer. I also play in a ska / punk / hip hop band. One of these Christmases I ran into a few of the people who used to bully me, who tried to start taking the piss out of me again. First off, after becoming an entertainer, and particularly through dealing with hecklers doing street performance, I'm pretty fucking quick-witted and know how to destroy somebody in a matter of seconds if I absolutely need to, and proceeded to do so. After this they asked me what I was doing, and they thought it was the most interesting thing in the world. Asked me loads of questions about it. Upon returning the question, it more or less went round the circle as working as a shelf stacker in a supermarket / horrible chain shopping malls. One guy wasn't there because he got busted after stealing a laptop, and some of them were dealers. Still, I walked away with quite a sense of pride and the definite realization that being popular / peaking in high school was possibly the worst thing that ever happened to them, and I was incredibly happy that I had been such a weirdo through the whole experience. Mildly boastful ahead and a bit long. Sorry, TLDR. Kids in my HS didn't think I was smart because I didn't take app courses and didn't brag about SAT scores, etc. They joked non-stop when I mentioned going to top tier schools. Saw them at reunion. Shared my MIT degree and recent MD, PhD candidacy at UCSF with them. Watched their pride die a bit in an instant. In high school, I was there in the early 90s. We didn't have super cliquey groups. Most people were really nice and friendly. Nevertheless, there were many, maybe 30 or so students that were all about class rank, where you applying to college, what was your SAT score, etc. I wasn't overly concerned about that stuff and typically stayed out of the conversations, but some were lifelong friends, so occasionally I would say what I hoped for, etc. One day a neighborhood kid friend asked me where I was hoping to go. I mentioned I was a little interested in the Air Force Academy because I wanted to study engineering and be a pilot. At the time I was taking some aviation tech classes from the local tech school instead of App Calc, App Bio, App Chemical, App History, etc. and they thought it was beneath them. He laughed at me and said since my parents didn't go to college I obviously had no idea how hard it was to get into a school like that. His dad happened to go to West Point and was a lawyer, so he was also clearly going to be successful, and he sure put me in my place, laughing the whole time, and for the remaining months fellow students he would poke fun at me for the sheer idea of it all whenever he saw me. My 10-year reunion happened to coincide with my youngest brother's wedding, so I attended it on short notice. Attending on short notice meant no history or current information about you are provided. When I got there the initial conversations were nice enough and many of them were great people. Some went to college, some went to tech programs, some had families, etc. However, at some point an hour or so in the neighborhood kid and handful of his closest friends jumped in and were grandstanding about their general greatness, etc. When they probed about my situation I told them that I ended up going to the local community college a year while I decided what I wanted to do, to which they laughed and said stuff like told you so to each other. Then I told them I ended up going to MIT instead of the Air Force Academy and that I got my undergraduate degree in maths instead of engineering. After that I had decided to go to med school and got into MSDP programs at UCSF, Stanford, Chicago and UCLA. I was, at that time, an MD PhD candidate at UCSF finishing up the PhD portion soon, and then I would go back and finish my 3rd and 4th year of med school right after. I was of course called a liar and all that, so I showed my UCSF ID, which was in my wallet, that read in large letters under my picture and name student, School of Medicine. There was probably a 4-day pause, at least it felt that way, then those guys shut up the rest of the night. The looks on their faces was priceless, and before they could leave I told them the aviation program was great, and they could still take it as adults. End note, aviation tech at that technical school changed my life. It taught me to work hard. Every job is important. To understand that knowledge for the sake of knowledge is great, but understanding how to apply it is what sets you apart. I learned to think practically as well as academically, and I learned that problems and failures are the best learning experiences. The teacher of that course was amazing and assisted every student with their academic strengths and shortcomings with true vision, and made every person better than they were when they started. Whether they wanted to fix planes, bartend or become doctors, he took your dreams seriously and offered all his knowledge and assistance at every turn. Although, he often gave up wisdom through parables about fixing planes and . He retired shortly after my tenure there, but the man's legacy lives on. Going to have to visit him next time I'm in town. I grew up in a medium-sized Midwestern town. I went to one of the poorer high schools on the north side of town. The two groups to hang out with were the ultra-religious, Pentecostal/Assemblies of God, or the troublemakers. There were very few groups in between, especially for a poor kid. You were either going to church 3 times a week, or were mainlining crank, the drug of choice at the time. I never felt comfortable with either group, but fell into the later minus the crank use. I always knew I didn't belong in that town, and that there was more to life, so at 20 I ran from that town as quickly as possible, and cut ties with everyone in it, including family. It's still the best decision I have ever made. I didn't friend anyone on social media or even check in with old friends or family. Shoot forward 15 years and I'd get an invite to the Facebook group for the reunion. It spurred my curiosity and I looked up people on the page and several old friends' pages. I stalked it a bit like many of us do, just to see what happened to people. It's amazing that people are still living the exact same lives as they did in high school. Minimum wage jobs, field parties, hanging out at the same places. Hell, many were living in the same places and driving the same cars. A few are dead, apparently, and not surprisingly, drug related. Virtually all have multiple kids and a divorce or 2. Not many went to college. I only found one who is living more than 50 miles from the high school. Lots of trailer homes and Confederate flags on their pages, but this was the case even when I lived there. It's a tough life, and it shows on many. The success stories. A guy that was a good friend made something of himself as a respiratory therapist, then quit that to be a weight loss coach, and seems to be making a go of it. A super religious and super hot girl who is now happily married to woman. She seems to have been cast out by her family, but they have 2 kids who seems and have a really positive life/attitude. Another guy, one of the few geeks, is now a semi-famous magician. Sad stories. The smartest girl in class, who was also super sweet and someone I knew since kindergarten, father was arrested. Turns out he was sexually abusing her and all her sisters their entire lives. I feel sad knowing that was going on, as she was truly a good soul. She seems happy now and is giving better than most others, but I hate myself for not recognizing the situation. Another very good friend of mine is a classic failure to launch scenario. A super nice guy, smart and strong, but never worked consistently. He also got a girl pregnant back in high school. He followed after and relied on his parents for everything, and his parents were also on various forms of welfare/disability. His parents both died a few years ago, and he is living their life. He is not working, on disability, and just doesn't know how to break the cycle. His, now teen, daughter is repeating the same cycle. Went to my junior high reunion after 25 years and surprisingly had more fun than I expected. Got along with mostly everyone, and had fun catching up with old friends. But when we all went to the bar, things got a bit weird. One of the guys was on the sports team with me in junior high and high school. Now, I never claimed to be an athlete. I just did the team because I can run fast, and it was good time waster. Coach figured that out easily. I was made mostly as a backup, unless it was my actual event, sprinting and long jump. I was never the star, and never treated as such. It was mostly a filler spot. Apparently this guy held some kind of insane grudge against me for all these years. He drunkenly told my wife this asshole better not be lying about being a track star, because he wasn't. I then caught him taking photos of my wife when she was against the wall looking through her phone. He then showed the photos off to me in his drunken stupor. Finally, we were all eating and talking about those who could not make it and how we missed them. I brought up one of my closest buddies I grew up with and how I missed the guy, and drunken grudge guy shouted, "How dare you talk about him? You never deserved talking about him. How he accepted your friend request." To which everyone tried shutting him up and apologizing. I was just totally confused about the whole situation until things slowly clicked into place after the event. Apparently he has been holding a 20+ grudge for what I have no idea. We were actually good friends most our life, so this shocked me. Then he was irritated my old friend accepted my friend request before accepting his. Why he kept sneaking photos of my wife I never knew. Was a very bizarre and both irritating and sad thing to experience for an otherwise wonderful night. Never went to my reunion as my graduating school was one I was forced into and didn't really get along with anyone. I do however keep up with a lot of people and my best friends are still the same from high school. We've all just grown up, done school, and have families. My best friend is married with a newborn son of his own and has adopted his wife's 2 children of which one has autism. He's becoming a nurse right now. He's still the same person, but used to have long hair to his back, and he's changed some things, like he doesn't wear gauges anymore in his ears or party obviously. Exact same attitude and mindset. It felt like he just went through different phases of this is what I want with no real personality changes, if you know what I mean. Another that had shitty parents is basically homeless. I helped him with a shower and place to stay, but he stank up the apartment not showering, and stopped going to work. Has really bad mental issues considering his mom sold him as a sex slave for drugs when he was little. He's got more issues than I can help with, so we split ways when he slammed into my car and caused $500 worth of damage just leaving my driveway one day. Gave me a crappy laptop as payment. One friend was shot and killed by a neighbor while arguing with his aunt outside. Said bitch won't shoot anybody, and he was wrong. He got me into cocaine from 17-19/20. Took me leaving town to stop, never went back to it. I still hang out with 2 other friends that live in the same town still. Even though I moved out of state, my family is still there, so I visit often. One got married and they can't have kids, ectopic pregnancy, and the other friend has a GF that doesn't want kids, so the couples hang out a lot, and my wife became friends with the women so get to see my best friends growing up all the time, except the one mentioned before. He's super busy and lives further away. One friend would never smoke weed. I threw a party at my house, got him to smoke once. He's now legal hemp grower and sells to state schools for research purposes. Huge podhead. Just last year one of my core group of friends died. Yes, almost everyone mentioned here hung out together. He quit heroin and was 8 months sober, got a dream job of his working at home for Apple tech support. Went out to celebrate with one last fix. Was given 100% fentanyl, SP. I hear a girl from high school has become a man now. I was the last boy she asked out, but I was dating someone and honestly not attracted to her. Remained friends but she disappeared when she became he. Possibly wanted to start over? I'll stop with this one, but I still talk daily to another friend. He got married pretty early. Lies a lot though, lets it snowball into craziness. She left him eventually for the lies. Lived with a fair weather type of guy that stopped paying rent. Then worked at a chicken farm living in a camper for like 2 years. Then got a job with the aforementioned dead friend's father's company. Doing well for himself, but in his 30s now, not making a lot of money, smokes weed all the time, and has no friends near him, so he's super lonely. They say you make lifetime friends in the army and after high school. I did not. I keep up with military buddies, saw one in Savannah last month, but I actually still hang out and talk to my high school friends, or at least the core group of them. Edit. I jumped around middle schools in the area and knew a lot of people from various high schools when we got there. Plus I got in a fight with some kid who then brought his friends to jump me the next day after our fight. Parents freaked out and moved me into a private Christian school where I was not a good Christian, haha. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe the channel.